Hello. Good afternoon. Welcome to almost the end of IBC. My name is Will, and I am a senior motion graphics designer and director. And I work in London for a company called MPC. MPC is big. We're international. We're in India, North America, Central America, and Europe. We do all kinds of things at these different studios. Visual effects for feature films, visual effects for commercials, 2D, 3D animation, internet content. We develop applications, and we're starting to branch into creating virtual reality applications and experiences as well. I work in our London office. I also very often work in our Amsterdam office here. We're linked. When I work in Amsterdam here, actually the computer that I'm using is the same one that I use when I'm in London. It sits in London, but even though I'm in Amsterdam, I can use it from here. We have a new office in Paris. Same thing happens there. All our hardware is in London. But the controllers for those are in Paris and Amsterdam. One great thing about working at a big company like MPC is I can show you amazing work that I had very little to do with. We do a lot of feature film visual effects. This is a still from Guardians of the Galaxy. We were one of 2 principal VFX studios on this film. We did work on a lot of the motion graphics for this project, along with another studio called Territory, based in London. We've got some new films coming up. This is a still from The Martian, featuring Matt Damon. It's directed by Ridley Scott. We've worked with Ridley on his last few films, including Prometheus. Great book, by the way. I imagine it'll probably be a great film, too. The Jungle Book. We are producing one of 2 new Jungle Book films. This one, through Disney Studios, is 90% CGI. We've got trees, environments, water, animals, tigers, whatever you name it. Everything's CG except for the Mowgli character, which is being played live by a little boy. The trailer came out for this yesterday. I think it's going to be great. Commercials. We're known for doing things with creatures that nature never intended, like making ponies that moonwalk, cats that sing, and babies that rock out on roller skates. We're also delving into new territory. Slightly gruesome image here. Sorry about that. This is a still from a virtual reality experience called Catatonic. It's a 15-minute ride that you experience with a virtual reality headset like an Oculus Rift. You go through a sort of 1940s insane asylum. It's absolutely terrifying, to be honest. Speaking of terrifying, this is the team that I work in. This is the motion graphics studio in London. A few guys have been comped in there. The difference between our team to the rest of most of MPC is that we handle all the aspects of the production ourselves. So, for instance, while you might work in a film department and do might be part of the creature VFX team, so you might have one person, your only job is to produce realistic looking fur, or you work in our commercials department and you're a compositor where your job is to create realistic, beautiful imagery. All of us work kind of across a job, so any one of us can take a creative brief, design it, animate it, edit it, deliver it, which is, I think one of the great things about working in motion graphics is you're never sort of pigeonholed into one job that you do over and over again. You're constantly being challenged with different kinds of jobs. We work in London. We like to have a good time. If you're ever in London, you'd like to pay us a visit, please do. Just remember to bring us some sweets and we'll be very happy. Okay, I'm going to show you our motion design reel now, and afterwards talk about 1 or 2 projects in particular. Here we go. Okay, so that's some of our recent work. Thank you very much. Like I said, it's a big variety of projects. There's 2D animation, 3D animation, animated logos, all the way through to projects that we did start to finish within our studio. I'm going to show you a couple of those projects right now. The first is this open for ZDF, the German broadcaster, for their Champions League coverage. We produced this for them prior to last season, and now we've just done a new version for this season. This is last season's version. Champions League Open, directed by two chaps, Tom and Stephen, who work in our studio, and they handled all the animation and effects work themselves.
We start with a shot of tradition, an ounce of passion. Then we add a splash of curiosity and a dash of refinement. Squeeze in a few drops of humor, and then shake it up with some generosity. Serve in good company with a slice of the unforgettable. Drink it slowly. Martel, full of character.
That was an ad that I directed for Martel Cognac. It's being shown in Nigeria. I made it along with a couple of other animators in our studio over the course of a month. It started showing there a few weeks ago. I've been trying to Google it to see if I can watch it online, but every time I Google Martel, I get Game of Thrones instead. So hopefully some people are enjoying it in Nigeria. I'm now going to talk about one project in particular. It's something we did recently. It's for a client that we had been doing a lot of 3D animation for. We have a client called Novartis. They're a pharmaceutical company. They make a muscle and back pain gel called Voltaren. And we've been doing all kinds of 3D animation showing what happens when you take this, or you rub this medicine on you, and what happens to your muscles, that sort of thing. Those were for TV commercials, 30-second international TV commercials. They came to us and said that they needed to produce a series of videos to show online to go with this campaign. And they said, we would like you to produce 5 one-minute character animation films in 3 weeks. So it was a bit like a bomb went off at the studio. We sort of picked ourselves up off the floor and we said, okay, we can do that. How about you give us 5 months? And absolutely, actually, they said that was fine. So we started making these films. I'm going to show you a couple of them now and then talk a bit about how we made them.
Your back pain is back again, isn't it? Let's not waste time. Some non-medicated gels may not go through your skin. Voltaren gel works 4 times faster. It penetrates deep into the muscle with a unique triple effect. First, it relieves the pain. Then it fights the root cause, inflammation, which helps accelerate the natural healing process. Woke up stiff with joint pain this morning. That means taking another pill. Or does it? People claim they take an average of 989 pills a year. Well, they don't have to. One application of Voltaren 12-hour can relieve your pain throughout the day. Unlike pills that go through the stomach, Voltaren goes deep into the joint to relieve pain, and the effect lasts for up to 12 hours. Just one application in the morning, and you can enjoy a day full of activities. Walking, biking, even working, if you really have to.
So when we started this project, we didn't have a lot to go with. Our client said, we basically want to make these films. We want a male character, a female character. We have these pretty simplistic scripts about what they're going to do and how they're going to act. But that was about it. And we sort of like it that way. That means there's a lot of room for us to design and create and invent and at times hopefully add some more interest and more fun to these things. So we started this process with some basic sketches. 2 animators in our studio, Kevin Francis and Arnaud Millet, drew up these sketches. And these are just a very quick way of saying to our client, are we on the right track here? Are we thinking the same thing that you're thinking? So there are lots of different shapes and sizes of characters, different haircuts, different clothing. Turned out we weren't really thinking what they were thinking. We sent them off this guy on the bottom left here thinking, he looks kind of cool, maybe you'll go for something like that. They came back and they said, well, we make healthcare products. And we said, yeah. And they said, well, he doesn't look very healthy. So we sort of went back to the drawing board and we started working in Illustrator. So using Adobe Illustrator is really important here for a couple of reasons. The first is it allows us to iterate very quickly. So we can swap little bits out like we're dealing with paper dolls and go, okay, well, we don't like green trousers, how about a blue skirt? No, we don't want a blue skirt, how about a business suit? How about a business suit with a skirt? We're just mixing and matching little bits until we get it working the way we want. The other thing that's really important is that anything we do at this stage in Illustrator kind of goes through our whole pipeline. So the assets that we create here in Illustrator are the ones that we're actually going to use when we start to animate. So these are all the different expressions that we built. And we get all that extra resolution out of these files. These are vector images. So when we use them in After Effects, we can zoom in on them so we can use the same asset for a wide shot that we'd use for a tight shot. Now that also includes any changes that we need to make to the character long down the line. On the first couple of films, we got them all the way through to final edits when the client said, we don't like that gray patch on his chin. We said, okay, fine. All we have to do is go back to the original Illustrator file, turn off the gray patch, and everything's sorted. It all iterates through After Effects and then Premiere. And basically, it's just a job of re-rendering it, and we're done. So that's our character design. We had lots of accessories for our characters to use. That's a Hoover based on Hoover back at my house. We did all kinds of infographics designs. Now this film was going out internationally. It's going to be re-versioned in different markets around the world, so it was key that we create graphics that are image heavy and text light. So these bits of text can easily be replaced. These are our environments. These are designed by animators in our studio, Matt Campbell and Melanie Kieser. And again, using Illustrator is really important here because it creates layered files. These layers can be separated in depth, and that helps you create a sense of 3D. You can play with parallax by moving the camera, or you can play with depth of field effects, all because you have these things spaced out in 3 dimensions inside After Effects. Now, one of the big problems we had was that the client wanted the characters to be lip-synced.
Back pain is not like any other pain. If you don't treat its root cause, inflammation, it will last longer. Let's take a closer look.
Okay, so that's me doing a quick lip-sync test in English. What if we use the same lip-sync in Italian?
Il dolore alla schiena non è come gli altri dolori. Se non si tratta il problema alla radice, l'infiammazione, durerà più a lungo. Vediamo più da vicino.
Okay, that's less good. Spanish?
El dolor de espalda no es como otro cualquiera. Si no trata el problema de raíz, una inflamación, le durará mucho más. Echémosle un vistazo más de cerca.
So, very gratefully, the client said no to lip sync, so we wound up using a third-person narrator, which got us out of the lip sync problem, which we were quite relieved about. Once we designed our characters and started thinking about stories, it was also time to think about animation. Now, we decided to animate our project in After Effects. There are lots of different options here for ways you could animate. You could use Flash and do a kind of cell animation style. You could perhaps do a 3D animation, but make it look like 2D. We decided to go ahead and do it in After Effects as a 2D animation using the tools that are inside After Effects. We decided, though, that what we wanted to do was create something called the character rig. Now, if you were at the previous demonstration, you know a little bit about character rigs, but if you don't, I'll explain how this works. Basically, you have an application like After Effects, and with the tools that come with it, you don't really have a logical way of manipulating a character. What you really want is something like a rig, something that's sort of made very much for the purpose of animating characters, so that the animators can do simple things like drag a slider back and forth that goes for, you know, one that does a smile, one does a frown, that sort of thing. So we decided to build a rig. Now, the kind of inspiration for our rigging is based on 3D character rigging. So this is a scene in 3D. Typical scene, skeleton, dog, coffee mug, see it every day. This is what happens in a typical 3D scene without a rigged character. You start grabbing things and moving them, and they move because they're not attached to anything else. There's nothing saying to that hand, it can't leave the arm. So animating in this way is really cumbersome, and it doesn't allow the animators to concentrate on creating characters. It just makes them concentrate on really tedious details. And just to give you an idea of how difficult this is, if I want this character to reach this coffee mug, I'm actually going to have to go and bend his hips. And it's just extremely difficult to work this way. So what 3D animators use is something called IK, or inverse kinematics. And that's just a very long term that describes basically if you grab his hand, his arm comes with it. So this character has got a complex 3D character animation rig using IK, but you never see it. You just see the controllers. So there are limits built into this rig to stop, for instance, the elbow from going the wrong way. But there are controls made that make everything deform in a kind of realistic way. So I grab him by this controller here, and his hips move, or his spine bends in a realistic way. Now I've got his arm, his shoulder's a bit closer, I can bend his wrist. And again, it's just helping the animators do their job, focusing on character development rather than on technology. One thing that's really useful in IK is a hip controller like this, where all the constraints are built in so that the hips move, but the feet stay on the ground, and all the rest of the body moves in a realistic way. So getting that kind of control, letting the animators create realistic movements, is sort of the holy grail of building a character rig. So that's 3D. How do you do it in 2D? Well, in a slightly similar way, we've got all these different characters. They're all made up of different bits and pieces that we can bend and stretch in different ways to make realistic movement. But how do you get that control into After Effects? Now, this is about a year ago we were making, or 6 months ago we were doing this, and we had to basically use sort of off-the-shelf different tools to create this system. The main one we used was something called Dueck. You can see the letters IK in there. Dueck is the creation of a guy called Nicholas Dufresne. He gives Dueck away for free. It's constant development. I gathered someone I spoke to yesterday that he's taken a lot further than the version that we're using currently. And what Dueck does is allows you to simulate IK inside After Effects in 2D. And I'll show you how that works. This is my character, my male character. And this is his right arm, so it's just that arm that you saw in that drawing. This is a tool in After Effects called the puppet tool. And basically what I'm doing is just defining the different articulation points, the wrist and the elbow and the shoulder. That creates these little things called pins. Now you can see pins 1, 2, and 3. Up on the right, these are the Dueck controls, so that we've added this functionality into After Effects. Basically what we're telling it is those little pins we just created are like bones. Treat them like bones, please. And I'm just going to rename them so they have logical names, which helps us understand what's happening at different points. If we need to troubleshoot it, we can figure out what's wrong with it. So once we've done that, we create something called a controller. Now you might have remembered in the 3D scene I showed that when we grabbed his hand, there was a blue box around his hand. This is the same thing. This is the thing you're going to grab when you want to move his hand. We just position it. It's just a null. We put it in a realistic position so that it's there where we want it. There's a little bit of technical work to do here with some parenting. Once we've done all that, we select the objects that make up this rig, just for his arm this time. And we tell Dueck that we want that to be an IK chain. IK chain just means these things are connected and they move in a logical way. Last little bit of parenting to do there. Once we've done that, we just select the hand controller, which is that white null at the top of our timeline, and we can move the arm around, and it moves in a fairly realistic way. Now we can add limits to this so that it can't bend in the wrong way, although we might, in a cartoon, might want the elbow to bend the wrong way for humor. So that's how we set up the IK system. Now we built that as a sort of the starting block for a whole multi-layered character rig, which I'm going to show you in a minute how that works. First, I'm going to show you one more film. Here we go.
When you have joint pain, resting is good, but exercise can be better. Actually, for this exercise, you can carry on reading. We're already extending our knee joints, so let's carry on doing that for 1 to 3 minutes. Now for exercise 2. Put your books down and do this movement slowly to strengthen the muscles. Do it 10 times with each leg. Okay, last one. Do this, again, 10 times for each leg. Well done! Doing these 3 exercises every day will help you manage your joint pain better and get on with your life.
So I mentioned earlier that we had very simple scripts from our client. So we tried as we went through these to develop some sort of character relationship. And we had the idea that our characters were kind of slowly falling in love. That's the final version, picture version of that film. In the director's cut, in my cut, the man actually put his hand on the woman's knee. Unfortunately, the client said absolutely not. So hopefully we'll get to make some more of these films and we can try to push their romantic relationship a little bit further. You may have noticed that the female character, while she was sat down, did something that looked a lot like a head turn. So this is the next step in our rigging process. In classic 2D cell animation, the way you would animate a head turn is that you would draw individual frames in between that would give the impression that the head is turning. Well, we wanted to do sort of the same thing in After Effects, but we didn't want to redraw it every time. We wanted those new images to replace the existing one automatically as part of our character rig. So we did that not just for the face, but for various parts of the body. So I'm going to show you how that works now. Here's our guy. We never give him a name, but so we just call him our guy. And this is his advanced character rig. You notice if I turn this little controller here, it just gives the impression that his head is turning. Obviously, you need to play it back quite fast for it to work, give the real illusion. But basically what's happening here, down in the timeline, you just can't see it, is After Effects is replacing different artwork for his face. So we have, I think, 5 different images of his face, and just by dragging that slider, it's just popping different ones in. Now, on the left-hand side there, you can see all these different effect controls. These are custom expressions that we've written that link to the controls for his rig. These controls all work together. And that's quite tricky, actually, to make sure that they don't conflict with each other. But so we have a simple control here, which just rotates his neck, tilts his neck back and forth. But that works in conjunction with the other controller, which changes his head rotation. So these things work nicely together until you see the hole in the back of his neck. Now, I mentioned the Dueck rig before. This Dueck rig is still inside this character, so we can still move his arms and his hands any way we want. And these movements can continue no matter what else we're doing with the body. You remember I showed with the 3D skeleton rig that you could grab his hip controller and move it in a realistic way. If I drag his crotch around, you'll see that his hips also move in a realistic way, well, or a fairly realistic way. And the artwork for the feet stays where it should. The hands and shoulders move with them as they should. This would be very difficult to do manually because you would have to constantly be reanimating the feet to stay in the right position. So actually this little bit of control is extremely useful when you're doing something like a walk cycle. The character's hips can go up and down as he steps, but the feet stay on the ground. We built IK controls for the feet as well. You can see also that we built some other controls in here which at first look like they're just a bit cute, but actually they have a real purpose. If you look at this foot bend control, so that creates a rather strange version of his foot, but actually that kind of pivot and roll is essential for creating a realistic walk cycle. If the feet and the ankles stay rigid, when a character walks, it doesn't really look like they're walking at all. A couple more controls here I wanted to show you. Now we did an overall body rotation control, which is this. And this is doing a few different things at the same time. It's changing out some artwork for his hips and his torso. It's also making sure that the pivot controllers for the shoulders, which are called the root control of those shoulders, they're staying where they should. They're moving in 2D alongside with the rest of the body. And the IK is all working along at the same time. Again, try doing this without this control setup, and you'd spend most of your time just making stuff look like it was attached. One final controller. This is just a simple expression controller, and all it does is just swap out different face shapes and mouth shapes. Again, using Illustrator in the beginning of this process, if we get far along and we decide, well, there's something we don't like about the way his mouth moved, we just swap out the original artwork, and it all follows through. We even keep the animation that we created. It just has a slightly different look. So that's the Pain Relievers project. Like I said, it was a good project. It was fun. We got to do a lot of creative storytelling, and we developed a system that we were happy with for animating in After Effects. And that's me done. Thank you very much.